Hello everyone, I am Jay Grimmelkind and I'm here with another tutorial. This one is how to do sort of PMV / tweening style animation using Live 2D. If you're unfamiliar, the tweening style of animation generally involves having a still image cut up into multiple parts, which can be rotated and scaled and moved, usually in a video editing program. This comes from tweening as in like the animation process, which involves generally moving and distorting objects in order to create in between frames for frame-by-frame animation. However, tweening in itself is a popular style of animation in the online animation community, especially with animation memes, multi-animator projects, and the like, because it can give a piece a lot of movement without the artist needing to draw as many frames, which means that each frame can have more detail. Now, the best tool for tweening is probably After Effects and its puppetry tool, but unfortunately After Effects is a paid program by Adobe, and Adobe products are of questionable quality at times, with just my opinion. Meanwhile, there's a lot of, especially new animators, young animators, hobbyists who can't really justify spending all that money. And After Effects can also be incredibly daunting. There are entire classes that are hundreds of dollars just learning how to use After Effects. It's an incredibly complicated program, and Live 2D is as well. But I do personally, as someone who briefly used After Effects, I do find Live 2D a bit simpler to approach, because it's just a image animation tool instead of an image animation tool, a 3D rendering tool, a video editor, and all these other things all compiled into one. It just does one thing and it makes it a little less daunting to approach. Now, you might be familiar with Live 2D as it is used to make models for VTubers. However, that's not its only function. It is primarily, I would say, used in order to animate still images into promotional, looped animations, stuff like that. You see it a lot with mobile games. They'll have graphics animated by in Live 2D. And that's the program itself, sort of I can't say whether its main functionality is animation or model rigging. But either way, this is a major function of the program, is creating animations. And so, we can take advantage of that as independent animators. Now, see, I have this shot here. Well, first you want to make sure you have your shot. You need to make sure you divide each part into different layers. Like I have each ear separate, I have the eye separate, head, other ear, body, tail, then the sort of closer part of the background, the mountains in the background, the clouds, and then the sky. How much you want to separate it just depends on how much you need to move it. Thankfully with the Live 2D method, you don't need to separate it as much as you would if you were using a video editor, because unlike most video editors where you can just kind of scale and rotate and sometimes squish and stretch parts, you can actually distort them on a set path. For example, even though this tail is one image, I can have it curl up and stretch out if I set it up right. Meanwhile, if I did that in a video editor and I wanted the tail to curl in, I would probably need to separate it into several chunks, and even then it probably wouldn't even look that good when it was done. But yeah, how much you want to separate just depends on how many moving parts you have, and how much you want to move said parts. But you do need to make sure you have something separate, because you could try and animate a completely flat single layer in Live 2D, but it would not work very well. But yeah, you see here is your parameters. This is essentially where you do your animation. These parameters are set up to rig a VTuber model. However, we're just gonna delete all of these. Just gonna quickly go through, because we don't need any of these. We can make our own, because we don't really need any of, because a lot of these are set up to be as ready to go for your VTuber model as possible. But again, we're not making a VTuber model, so that doesn't matter for us. Oops. Try not to delete your animation like I just did, or you delete your background. Yeah, just go through all these. Don't need them because you'll be making your own anyways. As you see here, this shot I have here is for Dream Suite in C major, my current multi-animator project. This is the first shot. If you follow me on Twitter, you've already seen me animate this. I'm just going to quickly retrace my steps and do it again to show you guys. So first, you have to decide what do you want to animate first. Personally, I would like to focus on the character here, Bristle Frost. I would like to animate her head moving. Now, her head is in multiple pieces. If this were a video editor, you would probably have to just move each piece separately and hope you're keeping them lined up properly. Thankfully, in Live 2D, it's a little simpler than that. So first step you want to do is go up here to Auto, and then I usually go with Standard Deformation. You could also do Heavy if you like really want to get precise, because you can move these little, like, you see what I'm doing with like the little tuft of fur? You can like distort it that way. I personally usually just go with Standard, because I don't mess with these vertices by hand very often, but it's entirely up to you. I would not do this, the deformation little. I've never been satisfied with the results whenever I use that one. I usually go Standard or Heavy. I'm just going to go Standard this time, and I'm going to want to do the same thing with her ears. Now this, you can also put these down manually. However, I've found that unless you need to do something extremely precise, the auto placement for the vertices works just fine. Now, what you'd have to do, you click on one of your parts, hold down Control, and click on the other two parts. And then you go up here to this like wobbly square. This becomes a warp deformer. Let's name this head. Now, apologies if you can hear some cars in the background. Oops, I forgot to... You see, if you realize, like, look, you can move her whole head around, but if you realize, like I just did, that you forgot something, you just take that, drag and drop it right in there. I should probably... let me add some vertices to the eye as well. Alright. Now look, that's her whole head. That can now move as one unit. And you can make a new parameter, and I'll just say bristle head. The defaults and minimum maximum ranges don't matter too much, and you can usually just go with the default parameter names, because again, you're just going in for one animation, and usually you'll be doing this for like quick short shots, so you don't have to worry too much about making sure everything is perfectly set up. It just needs to work for that one shot. Because again, everything here is optimized for either making an animation or a VTuber model, and those need to be way more optimized because there's a lot more motion there that you can't exactly account for beforehand. Meanwhile, with these animations, you can kind of like pick and choose. Like if you find that a certain angle or a certain parameter doesn't look good, you can just not use it. You can just make sure that your character is never seen from that angle. Meanwhile, with a VTuber model, you have to make sure they look good at every angle. Because you never know what's going to happen while you're using face tracking. So, but thankfully that means we don't really have to worry about the ID name, you don't have to worry about the ranges. I like to set the default to the minimum, but again, it doesn't super matter. But yeah, so this is going to be the parameter of moving her head. I'm going to add two keyforms. This one here will be when her head is down. This one here will be when her head is tilted up. You see, you have all these new vertices here as well you can distort with. This is not exactly what I'm going for here, but it's an option. Meanwhile, this outer red box is more like standard warping and deforming. If you need to get past this red box for whatever reason to get to this, you can just close it right there. But yeah, so And if you find you want to put like a frame in the middle for whatever reason, all you have to do is find the spot, click right here on the number, and then place down a keyframe. If you need the red box back, you can just click on the warp deformer in this window here. So I think I want to yeah. So you just tweak things as you like them. Okay. Alright, so that's one part of the animation done. Now let's do the tail. For the tail, I want to teach you to do something called skinning. Now let me do new parameter, bristle, tail. Now skinning is a bit more complicated. Actually, I'm going to put the parameter back at 0 for this. It's essentially sort of like rigging the drawing to have like bones to it. If you've ever used an animation program where you can give a drawing a sort of skeleton, then you know what I mean. But essentially, it gives you sort of joints. You can change your like the appearance of the art and the angles and stuff like that. So I want to give Bristlefrost's tail some movement. So I'll start here at the base. Now you don't want the deformers to be too close to each other, or else they will start to cut into each other. And now you're going to want to make sure you're on the bottom one here in this window. Hold shift and click on the top one. That'll select all 3 rotation deformers. See, I use this up here. This is rotation deformer. It essentially allows you to set a pivot point and rotate things. Then you want to go up here to modeling and skinning. Now it'll automatically set up right there. Look at that. So you can use this if you ever need to reset to default, so you can look at what everything looks like when it's normal. I would say do that, then hit this button here, which will add 3. And the one in the middle will be normal, while the ones on the edge can be your key poses. And then you just tweak it to your personal liking. I'm just having a bit of a hard time grabbing this deformer here. You see, sometimes this program can be finicky. That's just how it is. There we go. See, like that, and the movement looks a bit more natural than if I just rotated it at the base like you would in a video editor program. Personally, I think I probably should have put another deformer right here. However, this should work just fine. And this does work. Alright, now let's say you want to have her fur ruffle. If you've seen the animation I posted on Twitter, then you would know that her fur has a slight sort of effect to it, as if it's blowing in the wind. But how would you do that without distorting the entire body? Now, I would say bristle fur. What you're going to want to do is select her body, go to auto. I would say for this one, you probably want to do deformation heavy. You could probably still do standard and get away with it, but heavy deformation gives you more options, so I would just go with that. And then, let's say we want the fur on her back to move. You're going to want to select this tool here. You can adjust the size of the brush up here. I'm going to set the brush to be 40 pixels. And then I'm just going to run it over all these vertices real quick. Then go back to your arrow, hit the 3 green icons, and then you can sort of stretch and deform how you'd like. See, it looks a little wonky right now, but it will look better when it's properly in motion. Because then you can, like, if you find that your, like, extremes on either side are a little too much, then you can just keep the animation, like, within this range. Now, you can do the same thing, let's say the fur on her chest. Oh, jeez. The fur on her, like, her chest area. I'll grab the little, like, tuft in the middle there as well. And again, you can change the size, the rotation, placement, and it only affects the vertices you have selected. The other ones are barely moved, if at all. As you see, now her fur ruffles. Alright, well, let's say we want, you can do the same thing, let's say you want with her cheek. You want her cheek fur to do the same thing. You can still, like, even though she's inside this warp deformer, you can still deform her head normally. And what you'll do is you'll just attach it to the same parameter of bristle fur. Select these vertices. Then look at that. Ta-da! Alright, now let's say you want to add some movement to the ears. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. Bristle ears. Now, what you're going to do is, remember those warp deformers from earlier? Here's how you use them normally outside of skinning. You pick where you want the pivot point to be, and you just stretch it out like that. And there you go, you have a rotation deformer. Remember when you want to actually use the rotation deformer to click on it and not the ear, because the ear is still just a normal object underneath the warp deformer. So, say bristle ears. We'll have this extreme be when her ears are like this. This extreme be when her ears are like this. So it's sort of like that. We can do the same thing to her other ear, wherever it is. There it is. Oops. Again, you're going to want to put the pivot point towards the bottom where it attaches to the head. Bristle ears. There you go, just like that. Okay, so that is Bristle Frost animated, more or less. You could do more, you could do less, just depends on what you want. But let's say we want to do some stuff with the background. Now, what's great about Live 2D is that it doesn't discriminate against characters and objects. It does not care what you are deforming or what your parameters are, as long as you give it images to then warp, distort, and animate. So let's say we want to move these clouds. I'll just go clouds. And we'll go to the layer for the clouds. This is where the animation starts, and then the other will be right here. So the clouds will move. And let's also say you want the background itself to sort of feel like it's panning alongside the rest of the scene. Say, put this one in sky. This one we're probably going to want to slightly enlarge the sky image to ensure that we don't run out of like image to use. Then if you need to do precise movements and you don't trust your like clicking and dragging skills, then you can always use the arrow keys to move your various parts like this. Now, let's say you want to do the same thing with this like foreground-esque area. Then you would need to make sure you select everything in that area, which is going to include, which is essentially going to include the entirety of Bristlefrost, just her whole body. And then you're going to want to, oops. If that ever happens, because sometimes they get finicky with the warp deformers, all you have to do is, then you just have to move it all manually. Like I'll just say, make this the cliff. You'll just have to manually put it all into your warp deformer. It's no big deal. Again, this program is finicky. Sometimes it just doesn't like to work the way you want it to, but you can usually kind of push it into doing what it's supposed to. Yeah. Using the sky parameter. Oops. Bristlefrost's body was not in there. Just fix that. Okay. There we go, look at that. And you might want to add a little bit of movement to something like these mountains as well. Not completely in sync with the sky, just to show that they're at different depths. And there we go. So this is a relatively simple shot. There's more you can do, but if you just want to make a shot that is a still image look more dynamic, this is really all you need to do. Now, what you would do from there is you would just save. I'll just say this is test. Sometimes it'll prompt you to save twice, don't worry about it. Then you'll want to do new animation, because you can animate directly in Live 2D. So let's say just drag and drop this test thing here. And it defaults to 720p, but if you go down here, you can change it to anything. You can even change it to like not a screen size if you turn off fixed aspect ratio. I'm going to make it 720 by 1100. If you're using the free version, it's not going to let you export at like full quality, but I haven't had an issue yet with the quality not being high enough. So hopefully that doesn't become an issue for anyone else. So what you do is you take this purple, spread all the way past here. You can lengthen the animation if you want. You can also import sound, though again with the free version, if you export something with sound, it will have like these little beeps as sort of an audio watermark. You can very easily fix that by putting it into a video editing program and just replacing the sound back with another clean file without the beeps. But I've just found that you just make looping animations here that work for your shot and then just put them on top of the music in your video editor. So you're going to want to resize your shot. See, this shot is rather large because I want the camera to pan down. So to do that, I had to make sure it would accommodate that. Now, you hit that arrow and do Live 2D parameters. Now, these are all your parameters here, and you can now animate them freely using these keyframes. For example, say I want her to start with her head down, then throughout the course of the animation, have it go up. See that? See, it's not the most interesting animation in the world. there it is. Now, personally, what I like to do is sort of add a bit of like jitter to the movement. So you see, it would start their head going up, but it would kind of like stop and have it go down. You just kind of like play around with the parameters and just whatever looks good. Let's have her tail start out low. Oops. See, so now we have her head moving and her tail moving. Alright, now let's have her fur move. That one I think I'm gonna have it like put down a lot of keyframes just to have it have a lot of motion. There you go, and it looks like it's sort of moving in the wind. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the ears, but I'm going to do it like slightly out of sync with the fur, just to make it a little more dynamic. Let's look at it now. Look at that. Perfect. Alright, and then we'll have the clouds move. This is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to have them start at one end and end at the other with no sort of change to the movement. Okay, and then let's do the same thing with the sky parameter. Now look at that! What was once a still image is now a dynamic animated shot. Of course, you can adjust things. Like, I think I'm actually going to change the cloud animation to be the other way around. And you can do this without worrying about messing up, like, the look of, like, certain things. 'Cause I know sometimes you move objects in a video editing program and it'll move everything else. You don't have to worry about that here. You can freely change parameters and stuff without having to worry. And now let's say you want to do what I said earlier about the camera itself panning. Instead of moving like a camera, you just move the image itself. And so for that, you're going to want to make sure you can see your whole canvas properly. Then you're going to want to go to Placement and Transparency. Right here, click on the triangle, open it up. Essentially, you can also move things around with keyframes. So what I'm going to do, because I want the drop to be sudden at the end. If you've seen my storyboard for Dream Suite and C Major, you know that this part ends with like a sudden drop as the camera goes down. And so then we do that. Just like that. So you see camera pans down slowly at first, then it drops. Oh, but that's not fast enough. You see if you never need to move a keyframe, you just grab it. Once it's red, you know you have it, and then you move it. There we go. And there we go. See? That's a still image turned into a dynamic animated shot. Now from there, all you have to do is super easy. Go to export for image movie. You can export it as a GIF. You can export all the frames. But mostly you're just gonna do movie. Make sure you turn off show live 2D logo because you don't want a watermark on your stuff. And then you just export, say test. Again, sometimes it'll prompt you to save it twice. It'll only save it once. You're only going to get one file out of it. It just likes to be difficult. And it'll export. And there you go. An animated scene made with puppetry sort of dynamics without needing to spend money on an Adobe product. Again, this can all be done in the free version of the program. You see up here, Live 2D Cubism Editor, free version. This can all be done for free. Again, the only real downside to using the free version is that you can't export at full quality, but again, I haven't had an issue with that yet, because I think it exports at high enough quality that it's not terribly noticeable in a video. I've yet to look at something I've put into a video editor and be like, oh no, it's crunchy now. No, it all still looks good. So, I hope this tutorial helped, and I hope this can help you bring your animations, be they animation memes, multi-animator project parts, animatics, PMVs, whatever you're making. I hope this helps you sort of add a bit more life to your tweened animation. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye!